She didn't burn the house out of hatred, she burned it for justice. Flames licked the walls of the old Utah cottage, and Martha Wilcox stood on the roadside, arms crossed, as if waiting for the fire to consume not just wood and drywall, but 20 years of silence, lies, and betrayal. Police sirens wailed in the distance, but she didn't care. Let them come. Let them ask questions. She'd tell them the same thing she'd tell God himself. I took back what belonged to my son. 62 years old. 38 of them married. 25 spent in the shadow of Frank Henderson, her brother-in-law, the brother of her late husband. Martha had never liked him. Not from that first funeral, when he'd stood by Tom's casket, placed a hand on her shoulder, and whispered, "Now I'm responsible for you." Tom died in a car crash. He was 39. Martha was 41. Their son, Ben, was only 12. All that remained after the burial was a mortgage debt, a used minivan, and a relative who suddenly declared, "Family sticks together." Frank was successful. He owned a construction company, lived in a big house on the hill, sent his kids to private school, and vacationed in Europe every summer. Martha worked as a pharmacy cashier just to make ends meet. When Ben turned 16, he started asking questions. "Why is Uncle Frank paying for my college, not you?" "Because I don't have that kind of money," she'd replied. "Then why is he paying it all?" She didn't know what to say. The truth felt too cruel, even for an adult. And Ben was still a child. But the truth surfaced anyway. 10 years later. Ben died at 36. Not from illness, not from an accident, but from a broken heart. That's what Martha told the morgue attendant as she signed the papers. The doctors called it heart failure due to chronic stress. But Martha knew better. She knew what had really killed her son. A week before his death, Ben came to her in tears. He'd just learned that everything he'd built his life on, the house, his landscaping business, even his education, had been bought not with Frank's kindness, but with money stolen from him. "Mom," he'd said, gripping her hand, "Uncle Frank sold our land. The one Grandpa left to Dad. Remember? By Pyramid Lake? There's a housing development there now. And all the money, he kept it." Martha remembered. Yes, her father-in-law, the boy's grandfather, had indeed left that lakeside parcel to his two sons, half to Tom, half to Frank. After Tom's death, Tom's share should have passed to his wife and son. But Frank had convinced her it would be easier to sign a power of attorney so he could manage the property on the family's behalf. Grieving, confused, and overwhelmed, she'd signed. He sold the land for $1. $2 million. Not a single cent reached Ben. After her son's death, Martha stopped sleeping. Stopped cooking. Stopped leaving the house except for church and the cemetery. Her neighbor, elderly Mrs. Kane, brought her a cake and said, "You've got to let this go, Martha. Life's too short for anger." Martha nodded, smiled, thanked her, then went straight to the library. There, she spent 3 weeks studying Utah property law, deeds, and legal precedents. But everything she found only confirmed the worst. The statute of limitations had expired. No evidence. No witnesses. Frank was smart. He'd made sure everything looked legitimate. But Martha Wilcox was smart too, just differently. She knew justice wasn't always about courtrooms. Sometimes it was about symbols. About memory. About making the guilty feel the weight of what they'd stolen. So she began to write. First, she tracked down the notary who'd supposedly witnessed that power of attorney 25 years earlier. The man was retired, but still lived in town. She brought him a pie and a photo of Ben. "Do you remember when I signed papers after Tom died?" "Who are you?" "Martha Wilcox. Tom Henderson's wife." The old man fell silent. Then he pulled a yellowed folder from his desk. "I always felt something was off," he said. But Frank was convincing. "Said you agreed." "I was in mourning," Martha replied. "I didn't understand anything." He nodded and handed her a copy of the document. Her signature was real, but the notary seal was forged. The name? Completely fabricated. It was the first thread. Next, she found the retired real estate agent who'd handled the land sale. He remembered the deal. "Frank Henderson?" "Sure." Said he had full rights. Showed documents. What about the other owner? He claimed his brother was dead and that you and your son waived all claims. Martha recorded everything. Photographed the files. Took it all to a lawyer. He shook his head. Statute of limitations. No proof of intent. Even if the signature's forged, you won't win. I don't want a trial, Martha said. I want the truth. So she wrote letters. Dozens of them. To Frank's relatives. Business partners. Clients. Former employees. Anyone connected to him. She told the story, calmly, factually. Tom's death, her grief, the forged document, the stolen land, Ben growing up believing Frank was his benefactor, and finally, dying when he learned the truth. She mailed them by regular post, no threats, no anonymity. Just Martha Wilcox, mother of Ben Henderson. A week later, it began. Clients stopped calling. His top manager quit. His wife asked, "Is this true?" Frank called Martha. First calmly. "Martha, you misunderstood everything." Then with threats. "You're destroying my life." And Martha always replied the same. "You destroyed mine." But he didn't back down. Frank sued her for defamation, demanding $500,000. The local paper picked it up. Elderly woman versus wealthy contractor. Family feud turns to fire. In court, Martha didn't cry. Didn't shout. She just stared at Frank. "Your Honor," she said, "I don't want his money. I just want him to tell the truth." Frank denied everything. Called Martha emotionally unstable, grief-stricken, and delusional. The judge, a longtime friend of the Hendersons, dismissed the case. Martha lost. But by then, the whole town knew the truth. So she went further. She bought a one-way bus ticket to Salt Lake City. With her life savings, $12,000, she hired a private investigator. He found something crucial. Frank had built a new home. On the canyon's edge. Wood, glass, panoramic views. His dream house. And most importantly, he'd built it on the very plot of land that once belonged to her husband. More precisely, on the portion he'd secretly bought back from the developer after selling the family's inheritance. When Martha saw photos of the house, she didn't cry. She smiled. She returned home. Bought a can of gasoline. Wrote one final letter. It began. "Dear Frank, you thought you could steal not just the land, but our memory. You thought you could erase Tom, erase Ben, erase me. But you were wrong. I don't want your money. I don't need your apologies. I just want you to know I'm still here. And I remember." She didn't mail it. She left it on the hood of her old minivan, next to the burning house. Police arrived quickly. Frank stood in his pajamas, face smudged with soot, hair wild. He shouted, "It's her. It's Martha. She's lost her mind." Martha stayed silent. The sheriff approached. "Mrs. Wilcox, did you do this?" "I took back what belonged to my son," she said. "That was Frank's house." "No," Martha replied. "That was Tom's land." They arrested her. Her trial began 3 months later. But something had changed. People came to the courtroom, not for gossip, but for her. Women brought knitted socks. Men brought thermoses of coffee. Frank's former clients testified, yes, he lied. Yes, he cheated. Yes, he stiffed people on payments. Frank's wife filed for divorce. His company collapsed. And Martha sat in the courtroom, upright, calm, as if she already knew she'd won. In the end, the judge sentenced her to 3 years probation for willful destruction of property. Mitigating factors: her age, clean record, and extraordinary personal tragedy. Frank appealed. The court denied him. Today, Martha lives in a small cottage by a quiet lake, not Pyramid, but another one. It's peaceful. It smells of pine. She tends her garden, reads the Bible, goes to church on Sundays. Sometimes journalists visit. They ask, "Do you regret it?" She looks out the window and says, "I only regret I didn't do it sooner." Frank never rebuilt the house. Wildflowers now grow where it once stood. Sometimes Martha visits. She sits on a stone and whispers, "We're back, Tom. We're back, Ben." And the wind answers,